You are not poor because you made bad decisions. You are not poor because you lack discipline. You are not poor because you didn't work hard enough, or wanted badly enough, or think positively enough. You are not poor because of some personal failing that separates you from the people at the top. You are poor, or poorer than you should be, because a system was deliberately designed to keep you exactly where you are. And the people who designed it are the same people who benefit most from your staying there. This is the conversation that doesn't happen in mainstream discourse. The one that gets dismissed as conspiracy thinking, or envy, or a failure to take personal responsibility. Because the people who control mainstream discourse are the same people who benefit from you believing your financial position is entirely your own doing. It isn't. The ultra-rich don't just accumulate wealth. They architect systems that continuously extract wealth from everyone below them, while making that extraction feel natural, inevitable, and even deserved. They set traps so sophisticated that the people inside them don't just fail to escape. They actively defend the traps as features of a fair system. Today we're going to name every trap. We're going to expose exactly how each one works. And we're going to talk about what it actually looks like to see them clearly for the first time. Because you cannot escape a trap you cannot see. The first trap is the one you walked into before you were old enough to understand what you were agreeing to. Debt is not a financial product. Debt is a control mechanism. And the architecture of modern consumer debt has been constructed with extraordinary precision to ensure that the maximum number of people remain in the maximum amount of it for the maximum duration of their lives. Here is what the ultra-rich understand about debt that they will never teach in schools. Debt converts your future labor into present value for someone else. When you take out a loan, you are not borrowing money. You are selling your future time, future hours of your life, future units of your labor, to a financial institution that will collect on that sale with interest. The interest is not a fee for a service. The interest is the profit extracted from your future self by someone who had capital and used it to purchase a claim on your future. The trap is built into the structure of modern life so completely that it feels like the natural order. You need education. Here is debt. You need housing. Here is debt. You need transportation. Here is debt. You need to survive a medical emergency. Here is debt. At every point where you have a genuine human need, the system has positioned a debt product between you and the fulfillment of that need. And the rates are the cruelest part of the architecture. Credit card interest at 24%, payday loans at 300%, student loan interest compounding daily on balances that the entry-level salaries they were supposed to enable cannot service. The rates are not arbitrary. They are calibrated to keep the balance growing faster than the payments can reduce it, to keep the extraction ongoing as long as possible. The Rockefeller family understood the fundamental principle underlying this trap centuries before modern consumer credit existed. He who controls the credit controls the labor. Modern financial institutions have simply industrialized this principle to a scale that Rockefeller could only have dreamed of. Billions of people around the world working not to build their own futures, but to service the claims that financial institutions have purchased on those futures. The escape is not complicated, but it requires seeing the debt not as a tool available to you, but as a trap set for you. Every dollar of high-interest debt is a chain. Every month of minimum payment is a month of your labor going directly into someone else's wealth accumulation. The debt architecture was not designed to help you build wealth. It was designed to prevent it. The second trap is more sophisticated than the first because it doesn't feel like a trap at all. It feels like freedom. The ultra-rich discovered something extraordinary in the 20th century, that if you could attach human identity and status and self-worth to the consumption of products, You could convert the human need for significance into an endless revenue stream. That if people genuinely believed at a deep psychological level, that what they owned defined who they were, they would spend every dollar of discretionary income maintaining and upgrading their identity through purchases. This discovery transformed capitalism because it meant that rising wages didn't have to translate into rising savings and wealth accumulation among ordinary people. Rising wages could be immediately converted into rising consumption if the cultural programming was sophisticated enough. And the ultra-rich invested enormous resources in making the cultural programming exactly that sophisticated. Look at what happened to status symbols over the last century. The car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the clothes you wear, the phone in your pocket, the restaurants you photograph, the vacations you post. Every one of these has been deliberately cultivated as a marker of identity and status by industries that profit from your need to signal that identity continuously and expensively. The trap works because it exploits something real. The human need for status and belonging and significance is not manufactured. It is ancient and deep and entirely legitimate. What the ultra-rich did was intercept that legitimate need and redirect it through consumption. They built a channel between your need to matter and their products, so that the only path to satisfying the need, the only path your culture shows you, runs directly through spending money you often don't have on things you don't need to impress people who don't care. Warren Buffett famously still lives in the house he bought in 1958 for $31,000. He drives a modest car. He eats McDonald's for breakfast. The man worth over $100 billion has deliberately and completely opted out of the consumption identity trap, not because he can't afford luxury, but because he understands at a fundamental level that every dollar spent on consumption is a dollar not compounding into future wealth. He has seen the trap clearly for decades and chosen not to step in it. The people who cannot see the trap spend their entire lives one paycheck behind, not because they don't earn enough, but because everything they earn is immediately converted into the identity maintenance that the system tells them is the proof of their success. The third trap is the one that makes all the other traps permanent. Because without financial literacy, without a genuine understanding of how money actually works, you cannot see any of the other traps clearly enough to avoid them. And financial literacy is not taught in schools. This is not an accident. Think about what is taught: history, literature, mathematics, science, languages. The curriculum of modern education covers an enormous range of human knowledge, but it does not teach compound interest. It does not teach the difference between assets and liabilities. It does not teach how to read a balance sheet, or understand a mortgage contract, or evaluate the true cost of debt, or build a system for accumulating wealth over time. The people who design educational curricula are not ignorant of these subjects. They are not simply forgetting to include them. Financial literacy is absent from mass education because financially literate populations are harder to exploit. A person who understands compound interest cannot be sold a 30-year mortgage without understanding exactly how much the bank will extract over that period. A person who understands the difference between assets and liabilities cannot be convinced that a depreciating car bought on credit is an investment. A person who understands how wealth is actually built cannot be kept in the consumption identity trap. Robert Kiyosaki built an entire empire explaining a single distinction that should be taught in every school in the world: the difference between an asset and a liability. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. The rich acquire assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities while being told they are assets. The house you own is not necessarily an asset. The car you own is not an asset. The degree you borrowed money for is not automatically an asset. These are liabilities until they generate more than they cost. This single distinction, available to anyone who seeks it, but systematically absent from mass education, is the foundation of wealth building. The ultra-rich know it. Their children are taught it. And the educational system that serves everyone else leaves it out entirely. The result is a population of financially illiterate adults making enormous financial decisions: mortgages, student loans, retirement plans, investment choices, with no framework for evaluating what they are actually agreeing to. They walk into every financial interaction at a complete disadvantage against institutions staffed with people whose entire career is understanding the financial instruments that ordinary people will sign without understanding. The fourth trap is the one that makes wealth accumulation structurally impossible for most people, even when they understand everything else perfectly. Trading time for money is not a job, it is a trap, because time is the one resource that is absolutely finite. You have a fixed number of hours in your life. Every hour you sell to an employer for a wage is an hour that cannot be recovered. And the exchange rate, your hours for their money, is set entirely by people who benefit from setting it as low as possible. The ultra-rich do not trade time for money. They own systems that generate money, whether they are working or not. They own assets that produce income. They own businesses that employ other people's time. They own financial instruments that compound automatically. The fundamental difference between the ultra-rich and everyone else is not intelligence or work ethic or talent. It is that the ultra-rich have converted their time into systems, and their systems generate wealth continuously while they sleep. The trap of trading time for money has a ceiling that can never be broken as long as you remain inside it. There are only 24 hours in a day. Even at the highest professional wage rates, the time for money exchange has a mathematical maximum. And that maximum, even for lawyers and doctors and executives at the top of professional income, is nowhere near the income generated by systems that work without human time attached to them. The trap is designed to feel like opportunity. Work hard, earn more money, climb the ladder. And the ladder is real. You can climb it. But the ladder is inside a building, and the building belongs to someone else. You can climb to the top floor of someone else's building, or you can spend the same years building your own. The insidious element of this trap is that it consumes the resource you would need to escape it. To build systems, to create assets that generate passive income, you need time and capital. The time for money prison takes both. It takes your time in exchange for the money you spend to survive, leaving neither the time nor the capital to build anything that operates without your continuous presence. The escape requires understanding that the goal is not a higher wage. The goal is a system. And building that system requires redirecting some portion of the money the prison gives you, no matter how small, into assets rather than consumption, and protecting the time the prison hasn't claimed to build something that eventually operates without you. The fifth trap is deployed specifically against people who have escaped or are escaping the first four. Because even when people manage to accumulate some capital, the system has a trap waiting for that, too. The investment world has been made artificially complex, not because complexity serves investors, but because complexity serves the people who profit from managing other people's money. The financial services industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars annually from ordinary investors. It generates those fees through a combination of complexity theater, the performance of expertise so elaborate that ordinary people feel they cannot possibly navigate financial markets without professional guidance, and the systematic underperformance of most actively managed investment products relative to simple index investing. Here is what the ultra-rich actually know about investing that the financial services industry spends billions of dollars obscuring. Simple, low-cost, diversified long-term investing beats almost all actively managed investment strategies over time. John Bogle built Vanguard, an index fund investing on this single insight. Warren Buffett has repeatedly and publicly stated that most investors would be better served by a simple index fund strategy than by any active management. The evidence for this is overwhelming and has been available for decades. And yet, the financial services industry continues to collect its fees, continues to sell its complexity, continues to create products of Baroque intricacy that generate enormous fees for their creators and mediocre returns for their buyers. Because the complexity is not serving the investor. The complexity is the product being sold. The trap catches people who are trying to do the right thing. They have saved some money. They know they should invest it. They walk into the investment world and are immediately confronted with a bewildering array of products, strategies, and professionals, all claiming expertise and demanding fees. They hire someone. They pay the fees. They receive the mediocre returns, and they believe this is simply what investing looks like. It isn't. Investing is simple. The complexity is manufactured, and the fees extracted through that manufactured complexity represent an enormous and continuous transfer of wealth from ordinary investors to the financial services industry and the ultra-rich who own it. The sixth trap operates at a scale that makes the others look small. Because even if you understand every other trap and escape them all individually, you are still operating inside a system whose rules are written by the people the other traps have made wealthy. The ultra-rich don't just accumulate financial capital, they convert financial capital into political capital, and they use that political capital to write the rules of the system in their favor. Tax codes, regulatory frameworks, labor laws, intellectual property protections, bankruptcy rules, monetary policy. Every one of these is shaped by the concentrated lobbying power of enormous capital against the diffuse and uncoordinated interests of everyone else. The tax code is the most visible example. The ultra-rich pay lower effective tax rates than the professionals who serve them, not because of loopholes or technicalities, because the tax code was written with their input and in their interest. Carried interest provisions, capital gains rates set below income tax rates, stepped-up basis at death, eliminating capital gains entirely, trust structures that transfer wealth across generations, tax-free. These are not accidents or oversights. They are features requested, funded, and delivered through the political process. George Soros, the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson from the other direction. The most sophisticated capital allocators in the world treat political spending as an investment with calculable returns. $1 million donated to a campaign that results in a tax provision worth $10 million annually is not philanthropy. It is a 10-to-1 return on investment. And it is completely legal, because the people who would regulate it are the people who receive it. The trap for ordinary people is not just that this happens. The trap is the narrative constructed around it. The narrative that the political system is broadly representative, that votes matter more than money, that anyone can succeed if they work hard enough within the current rules. This narrative keeps ordinary people participating in a political system that has been structurally captured by the interests of the ultra-rich, believing their participation is meaningful when the rules of the game are set in private rooms they will never enter. The seventh trap is the most psychologically sophisticated of all, because it doesn't extract your money through debt or consumption or bad investment. It extracts your money through your dreams. The ultra-rich discovered something profound about human psychology, that hope is the most monetizable emotion in existence. That people who feel trapped in their financial circumstances are willing to pay enormous amounts of money for the possibility, not the reality, just the possibility of escape. This is the engine behind the lottery, behind multi-level marketing schemes, behind the celebrity memoir industry, behind the motivational speaking circuit, behind a significant portion of the self-help and financial education industry, behind cryptocurrency speculation cycles, behind every mechanism that sells ordinary people the dream of dramatic upward financial mobility in exchange for money they can't afford to spend. The lottery is the purest expression of the trap. Its players are overwhelmingly concentrated among the lowest income brackets, the people who can least afford the tickets. The expected return on a lottery ticket is approximately 50 cents on the dollar, making it the worst investment product available in any legal market. Yet it extracts billions from the people who most need those billions, because it sells something that no conventional investment can offer: the possibility of immediate, transformative, life-changing wealth. And for people who see no other path to that transformation, the possibility is worth the price, even when the mathematics are devastating. Multi-level marketing is a more sophisticated expression of the same engine. It sells not just the dream of wealth, but a system for achieving it, a community of believers, and a narrative of personal empowerment that makes the financial extraction feel like investment in your own future. The numbers are as devastating as the lottery. The overwhelming majority of participants lose money. The wealth flows upward to the architects of the system, and the participants defend it, fiercely, publicly, against all evidence, because the alternative to defending it is accepting that they were manipulated. Tony Robbins charges thousands of dollars for seminars attended by people who don't have thousands of dollars. Grant Cardone sells courses on building wealth to people who are spending money they need on the course. The financial education industry, with some genuine exceptions, is largely a mechanism for extracting money from financially struggling people by selling them the language and aesthetics of wealth without the actual transfer of wealth-building knowledge. The trap is not that hope is wrong. Hope is necessary and legitimate. The trap is that the ultra-rich have built an industry that monetizes hope without fulfilling it, that harvests the energy of people's desire for better circumstances without giving them the actual tools to create those circumstances. That takes the most powerful psychological fuel available, genuine human longing for a different life, and converts it into revenue without giving anything of equivalent value in return. Here is what becomes visible when you look at all 7 traps together as a system rather than as individual mechanisms. They are interlocking. Each trap reinforces the others. The debt trap consumes the capital you would need to escape the time for money trap. The consumption identity trap consumes the income that would give you that capital. The financial illiteracy trap prevents you from seeing either of them clearly. The investment complexity trap catches you if you somehow accumulate capital anyway. The political capture trap ensures the rules are written against you, even if you navigate everything else perfectly. And the hope monetization engine harvests whatever remains of your resources by selling you dreams instead of tools. They are self-reinforcing. Each trap leaves you more vulnerable to the others. Debt increases the pressure to maintain a consumption identity, to feel successful despite the debt. Financial illiteracy makes you more susceptible to the investment complexity illusion. The time for money prison leaves you too exhausted to develop the financial literacy that would help you escape it. And they are maintained by a narrative ecosystem that pathologizes escape. The person who questions the debt architecture is told they lack ambition. The person who rejects consumption identity is told they are cheap or eccentric. The person who sees the political capture trap is told they are a conspiracy theorist. The person who escapes the time for money prison through unconventional means is told they got lucky. The narrative that your financial position is entirely your personal responsibility, entirely the result of your personal choices and personal character, is not a neutral observation about how the world works. It is the ideological capstone of the entire trap system. Because as long as you believe your poverty is your fault, you will not look for the architects of the system that produces it. The ultra-rich did not get rich because they worked harder than everyone else. They got rich because they understood the system well enough to operate on the right side of it. And operating on the right side of the system requires first seeing it clearly. Every trap, every mechanism, every extraction point, without the comforting story that the system is neutral and the outcomes are deserved. You now see it clearly. What you do with that clarity is the only thing that has ever been entirely up to you.